Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Summer of 1991. The city slept beneath the quiet glow of streetlights. Midnight approached slowly. Sidewalks were empty. Apartment windows were dark. In the distance, the faint hum of traffic drifted through the warm summer air. It looked like an ordinary night in an ordinary city. But inside a small apartment building on North 25th Street, something deeply disturbing had been hidden for years. No one walking past that building could have imagined the horror waiting behind one particular door. Within hours, police officers would step inside that apartment, and what they would discover would shock the world. The name connected to that apartment was Jeffrey Dahmer. At first glance, Dahmer appeared completely ordinary. Neighbors described him as quiet, polite, almost invisible. He kept to himself. He rarely spoke to anyone in the building. Sometimes people saw him carrying grocery bags down the hallway. Other times they noticed him entering his apartment late at night. Nothing about him seemed dangerous. Nothing about him suggested the nightmare investigators would eventually uncover. But appearances can be deceiving. Behind the closed door of Dahmer's apartment, a horrifying secret had been unfolding for years. Jeffrey Dahmer was born in Milwaukee in 1960. During his childhood, his family moved several times before eventually settling in Ohio. People who knew him during his teenage years often described him as shy and socially awkward. He struggled to connect with other students. Often he spent long periods alone. Over time, that isolation grew deeper. Some classmates remembered strange behavior. Others said he seemed distant, almost disconnected from the world around him. But very few people truly understood what was happening inside his mind. In 1978, shortly after graduating from high school, Dahmer committed his first known murder. The crime went unnoticed. There were no witnesses, no immediate suspects. For years, no one connected that crime to the man Dahmer would later become. Life moved on. Dahmer drifted between different jobs. He struggled with alcohol. He lived quietly, rarely attracting attention. But the darkness inside him never disappeared. It simply waited. By the late 1980s, Dahmer returned to Milwaukee. He moved into a small apartment building in a working-class neighborhood. The building looked ordinary. Families lived there. Neighbors passed each other in the hallways every day. People went to work in the morning and returned home at night. It was the kind of place where nothing unusual was expected to happen. But inside Dahmer's apartment, a terrifying pattern of violence began to emerge. Dahmer started approaching young men in public places, sometimes in bars, sometimes near bus stops, sometimes on quiet streets late at night. He spoke softly, calmly. He offered money in exchange for photographs. Sometimes he offered drinks. Other times he promised easy money. To strangers, the offers seemed unusual but not dangerous. And sometimes curiosity was enough. Victims followed him back to his apartment. But once someone entered that apartment, their fate was often sealed. Inside the apartment, the atmosphere was dark and unsettling. Windows were covered. The room was dimly lit. The air felt heavy. Dahmer would drug his victims, leaving them unable to defend themselves. What happened next would later be described by investigators as some of the most disturbing crimes they had ever encountered. For years, the murders continued without being discovered. Occasionally, neighbors noticed strange smells drifting through the hallway. Some complained to the building manager. Others asked Dahmer if something was wrong. Each time he offered simple explanations. Spoiled food, broken appliances, plumbing issues. Those explanations were accepted, and the nightmare continued. But everything changed on the night of July 22, 1991. That night, something went wrong for Dahmer. One of his intended victims managed to escape. Still wearing handcuffs, the man ran through the streets searching for help. His heart raced. His breath came in short bursts. Behind him, the apartment building faded into darkness. but the fear followed him. Moments later, he encountered police officers. The officers immediately noticed the handcuffs. They stopped and listened as the frightened man tried to explain what had happened inside the apartment. At first, the officers believed they were responding to a simple disturbance, perhaps a misunderstanding, perhaps a domestic dispute. They escorted the man back to the apartment building, expecting to resolve the situation quickly. Instead, they were about to walk into one of the most disturbing crime scenes in modern history. When officers entered Dahmer's apartment, something immediately felt wrong. A powerful odor filled the room. The smell was overwhelming. The officers looked around. The apartment appeared cluttered, dimly lit, uncomfortable. Something about the environment made them uneasy. Then one of the officers opened a drawer. Inside were photographs. The images revealed scenes that were deeply disturbing. Victims appeared in horrifying positions. The officer stared at the photographs in disbelief. In that moment, everything changed. This was no longer a disturbance call. It was the beginning of a murder investigation. The apartment quickly became an active crime scene. Detectives arrived. Forensic teams began documenting every inch of the room. Evidence markers appeared across the apartment floor. Cameras flashed as investigators photographed what they were seeing. What they discovered shocked even the most experienced detectives. Evidence connected to multiple murders was hidden throughout the apartment. Closets contained disturbing items. Containers held evidence connected to victims who had disappeared over the years. Refrigerators held items investigators struggled to comprehend. Each discovery made the situation more horrifying. As the investigation expanded, detectives began comparing the evidence with missing person reports from Milwaukee and surrounding areas. Slowly, a terrifying pattern began to emerge. Over the following days, investigators uncovered evidence linking Jeffrey Dahmer to the murders of 17 victims. 17 lives lost. 17 families forever changed. News of the discovery spread rapidly. Television stations interrupted regular programming. Newspapers printed headlines that shocked readers across the country. The story from Milwaukee quickly became international news. People everywhere asked the same question. How could such horrific crimes remain hidden for so long? Soon, Jeffrey Dahmer was arrested. Investigators began questioning him. During those interrogations, Dahmer described the crimes in chilling detail. Detectives listened as the full story unfolded. Many later described the interrogation as one of the most disturbing experiences of their careers. The case quickly became one of the most widely discussed criminal investigations in modern history. In 1992, Jeffrey Dahmer stood trial. The courtroom was filled with reporters, investigators, and families of the victims. Cameras lined the back of the room. Journalists documented every moment of the proceedings. Prosecutors presented the evidence collected from the apartment. Witnesses described what investigators had discovered. Forensic experts explained how the evidence connected Dahmer to the murders. The testimony was difficult to hear. Family members of the victims sat quietly in the courtroom, listening to the details of crimes that had taken their loved ones away. After weeks of testimony, the jury reached its verdict. Jeffrey Dahmer was convicted of multiple counts of murder. He was sentenced to life in prison. But even after the trial ended, the questions remained. How could such horrific crimes remain hidden for so many years? Were warning signs ignored? Could the tragedy have been prevented? Decades later, investigators, journalists, and criminologists continue to study the case in search of answers. The apartment building where the crimes occurred has since been demolished. Today, nothing remains of the place where the investigation began. But the memory of what happened there still lingers. The story of Jeffrey Dahmer remains one of the darkest chapters in modern criminal history. It serves as a chilling reminder that sometimes the most terrifying secrets can exist behind the most ordinary doors. And for the families of the victims, the search for justice and healing continues even today. If you found this investigation compelling, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, because here we uncover the truth behind the world's most disturbing crimes. And sometimes the most terrifying stories are the ones that are completely real.